in there for your ballot on the 1st. That's the 1st of April in which that ballot's going to be there. And you'll find the referendum on there as you're voting for the local candidates for your area. Maybe you're voting for an alderman or a mayor or city council person. All of these different things are going to be on the referendum or on your ballot, and this referendum will be there as well. Now, referendums aren't necessarily laws. They are suggestions, and this suggestion to the Kane County Board is for a 0.75% tax increase. This is a new tax that they are proposing to create, and this is to let the board know what the people want. So we want to make sure that you are as informed as possible, and to help me with that, of course, is our good friend Brian Anderson from Kane County Speaks. That's KaneCountySpeaks.com. Thank you, Brian, for being here with us today. This isn't your first time in the studio, and I appreciate that coming in. I guess we haven't scared you away too much.
No. And thanks for being here. And I love your new programs. I love the new signage above, and you guys are doing great things here at the station.
We're trying, we got to grow somehow. If you're not growing, you're dying, right? That's
yeah.
If any plant has ever taught me anything, the ones that I don't water are the one.
No, you're right.
So we gotta foster that growth, whether that growth is here or in the community. But part of that is also maintaining the growth, and I think a lot of this tax side of it, I think, is growth that it hurts everybody. Well, it doesn't hurt necessarily the county or the board or the budget for Kane County. It helps that. But like most tax or tariffs or anything else, it's something that has to be paid just in the general commerce that we have. So let's talk a little bit about the referendum in general, and then we'll talk a little bit about the budget and where we got here with the budget, with the Safety Act and having to add, I think it was almost $10 million or so added to the budget from that. The other thing that we're going to be losing for Kane County is a lot of the grants and things that we got for COVID as well. So, if you would give us your overview or your elevator pitch for the
first
referendum.
Off, thanks for having me on live in the studio. It's so much better face-to-face, eyeball-to-eyeball than calling in,
Absolutely.
which I have in the
Thank
past.
you for that call as well yesterday when Dean and Mr. Tees were talking about that. That gave it a lot of clarity.
Good.
And that's why we wanted to do this. And we've got the whole hour. We're going to open up the phone lines, make sure that we can talk about what's going on with both the budget and this new referendum.
Okay. So just to be clear for all the great listeners out there, I'm a resident of Kane County. We live in Sugar Grove. I'm not any kind of politician, elected official, have no skin in the game other than I'm a concerned taxpayer that 2 years ago was invited to go to a Kane County government board meeting just to get an idea what the 24 board members that represent you and I, whether you're living in Carpentersville or Sleepy Hollow or Dundee or Aurora, Sugar Grove, and I never left. Right? I was just dumbfounded and staggered by, number one, how many different committees they have, and a lot of what they're trying to push on you and I as taxpayers. And the more we got involved and the more I dug in, I'm like, wow, there's, a lot going on in Kane County government. I used to think everything was bad in D.C., right? Both sides of the aisle, Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter. And then you go, it's probably like that in Springfield, right?
Okay.
Which it is. It can't be like that in our local municipalities, right?
Yeah.
And it is.
Yeah.
And then even here, I know that, April 1st, we've got some great people. I'm not going to mention names, but the city of Elgin City Council, great candidates. Want to see all the right people get elected. I mean, that's really part of my interest is getting the right people in the right seats to help create the right changes for you and I as taxpayers of Kane County. And so I said all that to say this, that I am no expert. I'm just a guy who goes to board meetings, that does some research, that has gotten deeper involved over the past 2 years. One expert, which I think you've spoke with or had on, Chris Lausen, the Kane County treasurer, certainly knows the number side perfectly. I know a fabulous woman out of Elburn, Illinois, Janine Mayer, who is a professional financial planner. And I met her through going to these board meetings as well. She's a concerned citizen. She is, that's what she does for a living.
Okay.
She works with individuals and clients, financial management. And she is another numbers expert. So there's a lot more people that could be speaking here today on this topic other than me.
Well, I mean, a lot of research, even just as a citizen, comes from those experts or those people that are there. And speaking as an engineer, a lot of times the experts aren't necessarily the people you want to have a conversation with because they're a little bit too invested, or it's a lot of in the weeds type of thing with it. And I bring it up often, but Einstein said that if you can't explain something simply, you don't necessarily understand it. So I appreciate you coming in your layman type of side, I guess, to put it. But we've all got some skin in the game. We live here. We still pay the property taxes for everything. And when we go out into Kane County, just like Madam Chair said in her interview, when we go out or somebody comes here to buy something or entertain, that's part of that revenue that's here in Kane County, and part of that money that they bring in for the Kane County, I guess the general fund, and then also the special fund for that. But that's the revenue, as if you wanted to look at it as a business or a family budget or a checkbook. That's the money that comes in. So when it's almost like getting another job. So each tax is another job. So if you can't pay your bills, you go out and get another job, or you turn around and you go, well, can I live without Disney Plus? Can I can I shave down my internet bill? Can I find better deals? And so it's that that kind of give and take between cost cutting and increasing revenue.
No, you're exactly right, and you've said a lot. And I want to rewind. I want to take your listeners back. So yesterday, every month, there is a county-wide board meeting where all of the 24 board members gather together in one room for a full county board meeting. Beyond that, they have 12 other committees. They have an executive committee, which is the committee chairs. They meet exclusively. And then there's all these other committees, whether it's legislative, jobs, transportation, energy, and environment. But yesterday was the full county board meeting. The next one will be after the election. And it was a packed house. Many of your viewers may not know this, but they can fit about 70 citizens in chairs in the boardroom upstairs.
Wow.
And it was packed. And then they have an overflow room downstairs. That was packed. So word got out that, obviously, hey, this is the last county board meeting before the election. And as you alluded to when we started the program, yes, concerned citizens wanted to go voice their opinion on, hey, I think we should have this. There were actually several that said, hey, here's who I am, here's where I live, and I'm all for it. Truth be told, it was probably 80-20, 80% of the citizens that were able to speak, we don't want it, we don't need it. the board needs to do what the board was elected to do, and that is be good financial stewards, as you alluded to a few minutes ago. I would encourage all of your listeners, they can simply log on YouTube, key in Kane County government, and all of a sudden they'll have all of the very last board meetings. So because it was yesterday, it'll be there. They can listen for themselves. And I think off the top of my head, if they fast forward to the 32-minute mark, they'll then be able to listen for themselves with their own ears, other fellow citizens around Kane County, because it was amazing. I heard people calling in from anywhere from Dundee and St. Charles and Geneva and Sugar Grove and everywhere in between, voicing their concerns. And so then for the next 45 minutes, I believe, close to that, you'll hear John Q. Taxpayer share their thoughts. So I would encourage all your listeners to do that. You also said, you like that layperson coming in to kind of simplify it. Here's what I would say to all the listeners in Kane County, and it's a hard truth to swallow. So in our 188-year history as a county, for the first time in 2020, the voters put in the first Democrat chair, Corrine Pirogue, which you had her on here on the radio, I think, last week. And, generally speaking, and that, don't hold me accountable because I'll be close with the numbers, the general budget was always around $67 million, where they had money to pay for all of the different, services. And it's ballooned. They just passed the 2025 budget, I don't know, about $138 million.
Oh, yeah.
So exponential spending. And so yesterday when I was driving home, had the show on, and I heard one of the callers call in and was asking David T. some questions about, well, why is this tax referendum even on the ballot? And I thought, great question. Let me chime in. And you and I, many people have been fortunate enough to have either a bank account, a savings account, a 401k. And so I'll use the example. I got to dip into my 401k to pay my bills. That's a big no-no, right? All your financial friends would say, don't do it. There's going to be a 25 or 28% penalty for taking your money out. Don't do it. Find another way. The example is, Sonar, that Kane County Board, they had to dip into their reserves at the tune of almost $29 million to balance their budget. So they started talking about this idea last fall because they obviously had to get it on the ballot for this April 1st election.
Now, is it required that they have the referendum, or is this something that they could just announce at the meetings and say, look, if you don't like it, come to the meetings and say anything? Is this something as a referendum? It doesn't seem like a necessity. It seems more like a, hey, we want to test the waters or get a litmus test of how the county feels about it. Could they just essentially turn around and say, look, we're going to just make it an open forum for the next couple of meetings, and then we'll all decide?
So I want to make sure I heard you correctly. Everything starts in committee. And so it came out of finance committee, or it came out of administration committee. It came out of one of those committees. And then it goes from that committee to the executive committee, where all of the chairs vote yay or nay to move it to the full county board for the full 24 board members to go yay or nay. And that's really on anything that they would want to do with your money and my money here in Kane County. The interesting thing is they make it very, very difficult for you and I, John Q. Taxpayer. I mean, look, I've been living in Kane County for a long time. I'll admit, I guess, my own ignorance. I had no idea that there was this governing body, this Kane County government out of Geneva with 24 board members. And, I started looking at my tax bill and go, okay, I see that about 4% of my total tax goes to this entity, but those pennies add up. And you've got these board members, and, you know, I will give them credit. They have a very good website, very robust website. So you and I, as curious citizens, it's actually, once you get in and start navigating, and if you're interested in what's going on with my money in Kane County, what are the programs, what's happening, you got the website. They have what they call Kane Connect, which you can subscribe to their monthly newsletter on, hey, here's what's going on. But to your point, most people, unless you were finely tuned, knew anything about what was going on.
Oh, exactly. And that's why I appreciate the referendum, because it allows us a chance if we didn't dive into it. Like if I didn't go to the Kane County, Illinois Gov and print it out, well, oh my goodness, how long is this PDF for the site here? 122 pages just for the general account.
Yes.
So if you don't want to go through all 122 pages, you don't want to jump in there, this at least gives us a chance, back to that layman aspect of it, to be able to kind of understand or I kind of peek under the hood to see what the board is looking at, and not in the sense of like nickel and dime and, okay, well, we need 3 more tires on this particular vehicle, but we need to repaint this shed over here. It's we've got a general fund, a special fund, and then this is the new tax we are proposing. It kind of boils it down into those hard tax and being able to explain it in that, back to that layman aspect of it. And what I like about the referendum is it doesn't overcomplicate it. They turn around, they say, these are the 3 things that we're not going to tax on it, but we're going to tax absolutely everything else. And it kind of takes it into that broader area so that if you did want to read all, I'm like, my goodness, if you read both the special and the general fund, you're looking at almost 250 pages of financial things. And my goodness, I don't read a 250-page book on the weekends. Like, what am I going to do?
So to simplify it, you're right, but those pennies add up to the tune of $51 million a year, and they're very, very reluctant to say that, right? It's just 0.75. It's just 75 cents on every 100. Those pennies add up.
Well, and those pennies aren't in the county anymore. They're now in the budget. And I think that's something that taxes do as well, is they move all 50 million of those dollars, and they're no longer in circulation. And we no longer have them to go spend and buy things and things like that. It's kind of pulled up towards that top.
Right. I want to rewind just for a moment for your listeners that may not know. So the board, 24 board members, the complexion, when you get a group of people together, just like we have here for the city council in Elgin, you get a group of people. Some are going to be Democrats, some are Republicans, some are independent. And so the current complexion, would be 17 Democrats to the 7 Republicans. And so simply put, for those with the conservative viewpoint, it's always a challenge to try to get their ideas, fully board approved, because it's a 17 to 7. That said, I can tell you that over the past 2 years, there are 5 Democrats, fair-minded, like you and I. Let's be frugal. Let's think about this. Is it really going to be best for the taxpayer? And then you have a group, tax away, ships ahoy. It's not enough. Let's tax them to death. I don't care. We need more money. And I'm speaking primarily about a guy named Vern Tepe, who represents a lot of people here in Elgin. I'm going to take your listeners to the Wayback Machine. When they started talking about this, many of the board members just wanted, you know what? This is the first time in the history that this specialty retail occupancy tax, that's what it's called by the statute, never happened before, because they've always been good at balancing their budget, because they've had what I would call a good group of board members on both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans, that somehow managed to balance the budget, pay for the services that you and I are accustomed to, and life went on in Kane County like it always has.
Well,
pretty good for most people.
Absolutely.
Right?
In Madam Pirog's interview last Thursday, which is on our YouTube page as well, if you want to go and brush up on that one, she said that in the 2018 budget that they were headed towards that deficit, whether or not it had hit or not. But she said it was working towards that financial inequality or not being able to pay for everything because of the lower revenue that was coming in 2018 when she took over, or the budget that she looked at in 2018 was. I think the phrase that she put it was headed towards a deficit. So I don't think it was particularly there, but it was headed that direction.
So to your point, and in all fairness, and I think she was elected in 2020.
She was.
She might have looked back and looked at the data, which
I'm glad she did.
Right.
You don't just take over something and go, okay, well, I'm new now, and slice it up.
No, I think that's wise. So here's what I would frame that up as.
Mm-hmm.
They've known. Right, the board in general, collective board, have known that, there's some things that we ought to be doing, but they've never done them, Sonar.
Okay.
They've never done. I'm going to give you and your listeners some examples to that very point. And I'm going to say this. So with this tax referendum on the ballot, the Kane County Board has done what I call kind of a learning and listening awareness tour around Kane County. Okay. They've had 5 of these meetings. They started in Burlington, of all places, at Mott's. Great bar, great little pub that's been there forever. I went to that meeting. There was one citizen from Burlington there. Then their second meeting was up in Dundee, and I was at that meeting, and there were probably 5 taxpayers there. Then their next meeting was in Elgin. Went to that meeting at the beautiful library, by the way. Absolutely beautiful library. There were probably 7, for a break? And then we went to the Aurora library, and there were probably 3 taxpayers there.
Oh, goodness.
This last week, before we wrap into a break, was at the Geneva Library, and probably the biggest attendance, probably at least 15 to 18 citizens came. So gaining a little steam, but what they were...
Well, we'll be right back right after this.
Perfect.
I told you an hour, we need it.
You're right, it goes by fast. Sonar Brian can't talk anymore.
There it is.
It's inaudible.
Welcome to WRMN. This is the community hour that we've put together here on WRMN. This is the hour of the week where we usually got a rotating show. Maybe it is Medicare made ABCD easy. Maybe it is a senior spotlight or a showcase or a business. We're trying to do a lot more here in the Kane County area and get some more information out there. And to help me do that, of course, is our friend of the station here, and that is Brian Anderson. You co-host the Kane County Speaks and are part of the KaneCountySpeaks.com website and group, and people can learn more about Kane County Speaks at that KaneCountySpeaks.com, right, Brian?
So, thanks for that. And I'm just a small team member in the COG. There is a whole team behind that of amazing patriots from around Kane County that are a part of that. But yes, I am. So I just wanted to finish up,
Absolutely.
if it's okay.
Go ahead.
I know I was saying a lot there before the break, that they were the Kane County government to go back to what you were saying about how does John Q. taxpayer, how do we find out about these things?
Yeah.
Doing these awareness tours. And they finished up in Geneva this week, and they had a good crowd. And then they're going to have one more on March 25th, I believe, 5:30 to 6:30 at the Sugar Grove Library. And then that's it until the election. And so I said all that to kind of answer what you were talking about is, how do people know? And then you were talking about Corrine taking over, looking back. You can appreciate this. You're not going to walk off a cliff if you know you're at the end of the cliff, right? What do I mean by that? It was at the Dundee awareness meet and greet, and Jared Sanchez, who I like Jared a lot. I think he's a super fair-minded guy. He's out of District 24. A citizen asked him a question. He goes, that's a good question. And he goes, truth be told, he goes, we've known about this budget deficit. And his words, not mine, we've kicked the can down the road for many years.
Yeah. And you think a lot of that is because of the grants that came in from COVID and then subsequently afterwards, and maybe we've kind of used that as a county as a crutch and said, well, if the money comes in, then we might as well spend it.
So that's a fair question, and I'll respond, but I'll say you can appreciate this. People are lazy in general, right?
Well, I'll give you that one.
Right. 80% of the work and the toil and the sacrifice is done by 20%, right? Whether it's in business, whether it's serving at church, whether it's serving your in your community, right? So I think some of it was lack of will, lack of we've got a job to do, and then you did have the COVID money come in. Now, Mavis Bates out of District 4, who's actually one of the spearheaders leading the whole tax referendum meetings, she has, tries to bring it back, well, the COVID money. And I reminded her at the Geneva meeting that I think there's, a little over 3,400 counties in the United States. And I said, with all due respect, Kane County wasn't like the only county that got this COVID money, and
exactly.
3,400 counties, and our federal government spent trillions of dollars, right?
Oh yeah,
and we could talk about that for weeks. But anyway, the money is gone. Some of the grants were gone, but it's been overspending. And I want to give you an example before we go to any callers.
Go ahead.
About this. They knew. So in the past 2 years, because like I said, I didn't get involved until 2 years ago. If you and I lost our jobs and we still have a mortgage, 2 car payments, our kids maybe go to parochial school or private school, we got groceries, you and I are going to go, you know what? That family vacation, we're going to have to postpone. Honey, I know you wanted me to put a pool in the backyard for family time. That's going to have to hold off for the next 2 or 3 years. I got to get a job. I got to get my feet back on the ground. I'm so thankful we've got money in the bank, right?
Yeah.
Well, here's what they did. We're broke. Well, the group that I'm involved with, just taxpayers wanting to go, let's be fiscally responsible. In the last 2 years, they tried to spend $110 million on a new government building that they don't need. I'm not going to be doing that if I'm broke, right?
Yeah.
They spent $750,000 just on the architecture plans, okay?
Okay.
Here, $750,000, it's going to cost this. I just heard from one of the Democrat board members after the Geneva meeting, Deborah Allen, the longest-serving board member. She's been there for 23 years. By the way, I love her to death. She goes, Brian, we should never did that because, I don't see us doing a new government building for 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, and that's half of the general funding at that point, too. Well, half now that it's 38 million.
My point, Sonar, if I'm broke and lost my job, I'm not going to go out and buy a new car, right? Yeah. I'm going to keep driving my used car. They also wanted to build a $40 to $50 million healthcare building. Luckily, we got both sides to come together and vote it down. Interesting enough, They have two in Kane County, one in Aurora, not too far from where I live, and one in Elgin. So when I went to one of these board meetings, and Mavis Bates, who's out of District 4, we need this. Citizens are clamoring. Thousands and thousands of people utilize, and they want this new healthcare building. I'm like, okay. I'm a taxpayer. I've never been. Where's my money going? I went and visited the Aurora location. Nobody was in there, but yet there were 5 or 6 team members behind one of those white plexiglass because I guess they're afraid that, if we breathe on each other, I'm going to die. But anyway, they're like, we'll be with you in a few minutes, kind of giving you the finger. Like, yeah, we're busy because they were on the phone. I waited for like 10 minutes. Nobody ever came, so I left. I drove up to Elgin, and lo and behold, now this is probably 2023, late summer. There's a sign on the door going back to 2016. I'm sorry, but in lieu of lack of basically taxpayers coming, people needing our services, we're only open 1 day a week.
Oh, goodness.
I went back to the next board meeting and said, so you're telling me that thousands are clamoring, but your Elgin location is only open 1 day a week. It's 2023, and you still got a sign up from 2016. I mean, just the optics alone
thousands
is a
over
disaster.
the year, right?
Right. Well, not even that. So, again, I just lost my job, but I'm going to go out and buy a new car. Probably not. So we got that voted down, thankfully. They wanted you and I to pay. They wanted to try to do a gas tax, 4% increase. Illinois is already among the highest, always has been in the nation. Luckily, we got that voted down as well. Now, you and I were talking about it during the break on why the 0.75. Many of the Democrats and the Republicans, like, when they were brainstorming in committee, how about, 25 cents? How about Vern Tepe, the board member that serves up here, I think I should know, District 22, he wanted to go the full 1%. Let's just go as high as we can. By the way, when it came to the vote on the gas tax, many of his Democrat colleagues said, no, we're not going to. He wanted to vote for that. The highest property tax. He is a tax guy. And ladies and gentlemen, locally here in Elgin, I'm only going to give it the plug. When you go and vote today, tomorrow, or up till April 1st, please vote for Ken Brutally for supervisor, not Vern Tepe, who's on the ballot, who, by the way, is a board member on the Kane County Board, making a base salary of $25,000 a year. Oh, by the way, Sonar, they gave themselves a raise in the last 6 months, which is fine. They gave themselves a $5,000 bump. So in 2026, it'll be $30,000. Now he wants to try to also be the township supervisor. And from what I understand, that pays a really, really nice salary. I actually reached out to the state's attorney because I just wanted to know, as a citizen, ethically speaking, can he, because I know the work and the time and the hours and all these committees that these people have. You're telling me that, and again, he's not a 27-year-old guy. When you and I were 27, we could work 20 hours a day, sleep for 4, and do it all over again, 365.
I can't do that. 40 and I
can't
got
do
3
that
jobs anyway. So
I can't do that anymore.
It's there. But member Tepe is going to be on with us on Friday, and I'll make sure that gets out as well, and we'll ask him what he thinks.
How can you run on two? How can you be a full-time, or they call it a part-time, but it's a pretty big, if you really want to do the job for we the people, it's a lot of work. So anyway, he wants to be the Kane County, remain on the board, and then he also wants to be the supervisor of a township, which is a big job. How can you do both?
That's true.
So I just find that interesting.
With the referendum, to talk a little bit about that as well. We've got a caller sitting here. Let's go ahead and get to that one here. We only got about 15 minutes. I told you it was going to be quick.
It does.
Hello, caller. What would you like to talk about?
Yes, good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
When I listened to Madam Chairperson last week on the radio, I could have been wrong, although I went back and listened once again. But I was of the opinion that she was trying to tell us that if you don't vote for this tax referendum, then we're going to have to do something else. And she essentially said, it's very likely we'll have to raise your property taxes.
That was the implication on that one, because I think like we had started at the beginning was if you need to balance your budget, there's two ways to do it. You either cut the expenses or you find another way for revenue or get a raise, or maybe you go to your boss and ask for a raise, which kind of what they're doing here. Right. How does that feel for you, or what are your concerns on that one?
Well, I understand what you're saying, Sonar, but she was very specific in saying that if you don't vote for this, then do you want your property taxes raised? That sounds like a threat to me. And your guest today is kind of preaching to the choir. I think that we know at the national level, the state level, the mismanagement, and of course it filters down to the county and the city too. Spending money that you don't have. It doesn't make sense. You don't do it in your home. We shouldn't expect our people that we appoint to these government positions to be our representatives to spend money they don't have.
Well, thank you, caller. We got a few minutes here. If you wouldn't mind, I'll take you off the air with it and let Brian answer that question.
And I'm so thankful that he just called in, and I want to respond to him. You know, speaking to the choir, I used to think that as well, but by going to these Kane County board meetings, and yesterday, I'm here to tell you, and there are people who go, well, let's tax away. And my comment, I always turn around politely and say thank you for that. I go, you're more than welcome to cut a check right now today and walk it to the treasurer's office. You want to, as a taxpayer, go, hey, here's $5,000. I'd like it to go to the general budget. So that's your freedom to do. What I was also going to say to him, I'm glad he brought that up, because they have a 22-page PowerPoint presentation, and it says property taxes have remained the same for more than 12 years. That's not true. They just raised our property taxes. They called it a CPI levy.
Was that like the 3% or something that they just raised?
Yes. Yeah. And then I want to read this quickly, then we'll go to the phone lines. Yeah. This is directly off of the county board's 22-page presentation. What happens if the resolution fails? If the resolution does not pass, the Kane County Board will continue funding public safety through the general fund, which is currently facing a deficit, which is true. Without additional revenue, and here it is, folks. Here's the home run. Without additional revenue, the county may need to consider cuts to public safety and services or explore alternative tax increases. Here's my point, Sonar. If I am the chair of the Kane County Board, Brian Anderson, we're in a deficit. We're over the cliff. I knew it back in 2018. My language is going to be, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to tell you, if it doesn't pass, we will be. You see, that tells me as a taxpayer, they're not being straightforward with us. There is money in the bank. We get money off the interest income, which nobody's talking about. I think there's 18 million we make annually, or maybe more than that. So the other thing before we go to the phone lines is they make it sound like Kane County will be the new Cabrini Greens. That's not going to happen. If we need to make cuts, and if anybody asks my opinion, we need to trim the health department. We don't need 66 team members, right? We could trim different departments like transportation. And the last people I would even be talking about would be our police and fire and state's attorney, although that may be on the block as well. The beat cop still here in Elgin, you're not going to see any difference. So, as I reminded the board yesterday, for those of us that do believe in God's word, it says in the Bible at least 365 times, God says, hey, man, fear not. So we shouldn't be falling for the sky's falling. If this doesn't pass, Kane County is going to be gloom and doom. And I'm here to tell your audience that is far from the truth.
Okay. Well, here we go. We've got John Prigge coming on right now. And thank you for laying out those cuts, too, because I hear a lot of times people say, well, cut. It's like, okay, what do you want to cut?
Yes.
Do you want to cut the new human trafficking program that the state's attorneys put together? Do you want to cut the police and fire? Do you want to cut the roads? Do you want? I mean, you can justify spending money on almost anything for a municipality in there. So here we go with John Prigge. Welcome aboard, sir. Thank you.
Good morning, gentlemen. You know, the one thing that I see happening here and in previous years, whenever there was the possibility of a labor strike, the first thing people were told by management or the people in charge is that, oh, well, if we don't get our way, we're going to have to cut the fun stuff. Mm-hmm. We're going to have to take cops off the street. We're going to have to empty firehouses. That's pulling a fire alarm, mm-hmm. as it's been said. So that's common. That's in the tool bag of weapons to use and to force people to vote for something, because we all don't want to live with less police and less fire and anything else. But the one thing I just wanted to say is that it was just mentioned, you can sell a tax increase. You just have to come back and say, this is going to be a gain. We're going to cut X amount of millions or dollars, or look for inefficiencies so that we can lessen the blow. That hasn't happened. Mm-hmm. It hasn't happened in local government. It just all depends on who's on the council or who's on the board. If they say just go ahead and charge them, fine. But it's nicer to be able to present to the people to say, yes, we're going to raise the percentage of 0.75%, but we've also found some inefficiencies that when we redirect or remove those, not going to be any difference. Nobody works on inefficiency.
Mr. Anderson, is that the 1-2 punch? Is it cut it down and possibly put a slight increase on there, but not as much, or should it just be only cuts and that's it? We shouldn't even talk about increase.
Well, that's a great question, and for timing wise and total transparency, it's worthy of a lot of conversation. But I would say that you always do the cuts first, right? Mm-hmm. You sit down with the wife. What can we cut back, right? Okay, Netflix has got to go. We can't do the family vacation this year. The pool's off the table for 2 years. Mm-hmm. Let me get my job. I know I'm going to get a raise, and then you do what you need to do.
So cut the cost and hope for a raise.
Right, because I can tell your listener, and I appreciate him calling, and John, you're exactly correct. I've got a friend of mine who's Michael McMahon, who, by the way, for your listeners that are out in Plato, you want to go out and vote for him as supervisor. But he spoke at one of these meet and greets, and he was a firefighter in Chicago for 30, 40 years, and he said the same thing John said. It's a tactic. If we don't do this, if we don't do that, then we're going to be cutting all the fire. He goes, it never happened, right? So it's a scare bully tactic, and that's certainly something that we need to be aware of.
Thank you, John. I only got about 5 minutes left. Did you have anything else you'd like to put in?
I just want to thank Mr. Anderson for being a diligent citizen.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
All right, you bet. Thanks, man.
Okay, we got about 5 minutes there, Mr. Anderson. Let's talk a little bit about the proposed tax that's here. So what is being laid out is a 0.75% tax on anything that is not groceries, prescription medication, and I think car purchases, I think are the only three that I've seen for the exemptions.
Okay.
Is there anything else that is exempt from that?
No, that I think you're spot on. And just to clarify, and it's always Brian, never Mr. Anderson.
Oh, sorry. There you go, Brian.
Anyway, thanks for that. You know, it's funny that you mentioned that, because what they don't bring up at these meet and greets that they've had, here's what is, right? Here's what's on there.
Well, it's a much shorter list of exclusions.
Yeah, so, I mean, and listen, my wife and I, we're empty nesters. We've got 3 adult children. We've got 2 grandsons. So it's a little bit different life for me. But for all, Kane County, a lot of new families. So listen, what is going to be taxed on there? You're going out and you're buying your kids clothes, right? Clothes and footwear. Hey, furniture, home furnishings. A lot of times, if mom and dad are both working, what do we do on a Friday or Saturday? We get together, our family time, we're going out to dinner. Taxed, right? That's on there. Soft drinks. Oh, by the way, gasoline, right? I can drive, 50 miles, get over the border in Wisconsin, and I think my gas goes per gallon down about 45 cents. So gas is on there. Cleaning supplies, medical supplies. They don't talk about it. I'm a new family. Diapers, baby, pet supplies. Most people don't know. I think the pet industry is about a $38 billion a year industry. Well, my dog Spot, right? Hey man, sorry,
that's
dude.
Where they're projecting this extra 50 million to come into, because it is a tax on everything else, and you got to think about it. They say $100 will give you 75 cents for every $100, which doesn't sound that much until you turn around and go, well, I spend a lot of $100 out in the world of everything that I'm doing with. I mean, there are people that are spending $100 in just gas for the week. You start talking about diapers. Again, I'm still in that phase right now. We haven't got to the reusables yet, but I do have those in the closet in case I need them. But it does add up, and then they've given us a number of the projected side of it. And is that to fill the gap of the $138 $1 million budget that they've put together for this fiscal year? And that's to kind of fill the gap for it.
Well, they need to be making the proper cuts, right? As we talked about at the break, they've been spending, even though we're walking off a cliff. They just gave themselves a pay raise, which is a whole different conversation. They just spent $127,500 last month. They think they now need to hire a strategic consulting company to come in and, oh, by the way, the company's parent company is embroiled in a lawsuit of about $7.2 million, but they're like, that's okay. We're gonna use them anyway.
Goodness.
Oh, by the way, when I leave here, I'm going to a Kane County board meeting at 10:30 because they want to hire more people. And my whole point is, wait till after April 1st,
there
right?
You go. That's Brian Anderson.
They just keep wanting to spend. Good way to end the program.
Kane County Speaks. I've got Vern Tempe on with me on Friday. Thanks a lot for being here.
Can I come and talk with Vern Tempe?
Sure, come on over. You call in. We'll take the same calls.
Thanks for everything. Love the show.
Not just